to Off the Record, talking real estate with Joe and Makayla. If you're interested in the Portland, Oregon real estate market and want the unvarnished inside scoop, you've come to the right place. Thanks for giving us a listen. Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. Hello, Makayla. How are you?
I'm good. It's Valentine's Day.
It is. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. It won't be Valentine's Day when this releases. We're not that on top of our game, but maybe one day we will be.
Rika's on top of her game.
She sure is.
Yeah.
Day 2 of the snow.
Yeah, day 2 of Snowmageddon. I had a 5.5 hour home inspection yesterday up in the highlands of Lake Oswego. It was nasty. It was really nasty. But we've got a great podcast put together for everyone today. We will be talking about the biggest home buying mistakes in Portland, some of the things that we're seeing home buyers do. Mostly when we're representing the sellers, we see a lot of this from buyers making offers on our clients' properties. But we thought we'd share it just so you guys can, you know, if you're in the market or you're thinking about getting in the market or just from a real estate standpoint, there are some things you can do to really help yourself, but there's certainly a lot of things you can do that are not so great. So we'll be talking about those. But before we do that, we've got a new segment.
Drum roll.
We are going to be doing the In the News.
I love this. I feel like there's a lot of real estate news that goes on some weeks more than others. And it's exciting to me to think about getting to report on it, quote unquote, right, in real time. And we think it could be useful for you to hear our take on some of these things.
Yeah, so this is the In the News segment with your noted news person, Makayla Mast. I'll just be the weather guy off to the side.
No, please no.
So what's in the news? What are you seeing?
Well, it was kind of a slow week, which was disappointing because we were excited about this. But I found the Barbara Corcoran interview really interesting. If you guys don't know who she is a self-made millionaire, maybe billionaire. I don't think she's a billionaire, but she found her wealth through selling real estate.
She was the queen bee of real estate in New York City for years and years and years. Now you can see her on Shark Tank, and she's really good.
She's great. I like her take. She's very straightforward, no BS. Not really like a headline person. They interviewed her on Fox News. They do pretty regularly, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting because it felt like she was saying a lot of the same things that we've been feeling. And she noted that rates aren't going to come below 6% this year. And if they do get to 6.25, you should be excited about that and jump on that opportunity.
She also said that if that happens, prices are going to drive through the roof.
Right.
Again.
Yeah. Which
exacerbates the problem that we have right now, especially here in Portland, which is affordability. So it's kind of a mixed bag. And you know, she said a lot of the things that we've been talking about for a long time is that, you know, it's really tough for first-time home buyers and people with not a lot of equity in their house who need a bigger house or need to move for job situations or whatever. It's just a really difficult time in real estate. And you really have to pay attention to the details. But also, you know, here locally, some of the big news that came out was we have the most amount of inventory that we've had in years since, I think, before the pandemic.
That's crazy.
3.7 months, which still
isn't a totally balanced market.
Not a lot. Last January was 3.2, and then 2023 was 2.7. It's kind of a weird stat because the reason there's more homes on the market and available is not just because there's more people putting their homes on the market. It's because less of them are selling, right? Sales went down 21% from January to December, which is not great.
No,
not at all. Loan applications, which are a big indicator for us because that's the very beginning of the process for most buyers when they sit down with their lender and make application for a loan and basically give all their information. The loan officer or the mortgage broker will then take that information and say, okay, well, you're qualified for up to $550,000 with either a 5-10% down payment or whatever the case might be. But those numbers, and they keep track of how many people are making loan application, 65% down. Yeah. Over last year. So a lot fewer people in the marketplace, but like anything, I think there's opportunity in whatever the situation is. And I think the opportunity here is that, if you can afford a home, if it's a good situation for you, done your homework, there are really good places to be bought.
There is. I feel like it is a really good time to buy, like you said, if you're well prepared. Mm-hmm. I'm so surprised by that stat because, the interest rates crept up, it's been 2 years now, almost. And so everyone who has those low interest rate mortgages aren't wanting to get rid of them, which is completely understandable. But it's just interesting that, because in my mind, I would have thought there'd be a lag from people not buying. Maybe those people are saving up over the last year, and that this year is the year that they've been waiting and they can jump on it. But that is just not what we're seeing.
No, it is not.
But that's okay.
Yeah. So that's the news and what we're seeing right now. We're going to dig deeper for the next pod. These were kind of some just general things, but we're going to dig deeper and find out, some of the ins and outs of what real estate is doing here locally and nationally for you, just to kind of give you some snippets on some stuff that might be interesting. But now we want to take you to our topic for the day, which is buyer beware.
Buyers beware.
The biggest home buying mistakes in Portland. So tell me, what's the scoop? What's the skinny here?
Well, they're obviously buying a home is one of the biggest investments you'll ever make, but small mistakes during this process can cost you big time. And we wanted to break down the most common and avoidable mistakes Portland home buyers make. Really, any home buyers. This isn't exactly exclusive to Portland. From, some people waive inspections in order to get the house, and maybe they aren't pre-approved before things get competitive. We have a long list, so we're going to go through each of those bullet points and give our take.
So we still see people waiving inspections, which to me is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you can affect that same impact with the seller while still being able to do your inspection. Mm-hmm. Do the inspection and just say that you're not going to ask for any repairs. Mm-hmm. But you still keep the right to terminate the transaction if something catastrophic comes up. If you waive your inspection, that contingency is gone. Mm-hmm. And even if you do an inspection, you might find something, but you've already accepted the property as is.
Right. The other thing that we like to suggest is you can say you have the right to do an inspection, but you won't ask for any single repair under $3,000 or $5,000 or whatever you choose that amount to be, whatever you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. That way the sellers know, okay, they're not going to be nitpicking me on these small items. It's not going to be a headache for me to close the sale with them. But if there's a leak in the roof or a crack in a sewer line, we'll get that taken care of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a much better way to go. And it still gives you some credibility and some benefit with the seller around that contingency. So
even when we work with our investor clients who are buying these, $400,000 houses or less that are in complete need of repair, and they've been through themselves and they have the eye to look for these things. When they say, Makayla, Joe, put on the offer, we're not asking for inspections, it kills me inside. Mm-hmm. I know it's just such a risk and it doesn't feel like it to them because they feel like they can repair anything, but I feel like I'm always sending those offers with closed eyes because it hurts my soul a little bit. So please, always get inspections.
Number 2, how not getting pre-approved can ruin your chances in a competitive market. It feels like a no-brainer, but I still see people that don't have an approval letter when they're making their offers.
Right. I think that if they're working with a mortgage broker or lender, that means they're far along in the process, but you really aren't fully there until you have that pre-approval from the lender. Like, I know it's annoying to get all these documents to them and it takes time, but you're not pre-approved until you're pre-approved. Right.
And the other thing, most savvy listing brokers are going to look at the pre-approval and see if credit's been pulled. Mm-hmm. Right. And a lot of people will say, I made loan application, but the lender or the mortgage broker didn't pull credit. And that's one of those things that they're going to have to do. So go ahead and have them do that up front and have them include that in the approval letter, because without that, that's a big one for me. If I'm reviewing an offer and they haven't pulled credit yet. The other one is working with a bank lender versus a private mortgage broker. The difference between that. So like if I see a U.S. bank approval, that's great. I know I'm not going to get them after 5 o'clock, and I know I'm not going to get them on the weekends. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
And people really don't understand that. There's nothing like wanting to write an offer for our client's dream home and their bank lender won't pick up on a Sunday and they miss out on it.
Yeah.
It's a big bummer.
Yeah.
So make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you go shopping. I know it's exciting, but it's important.
So let's talk about a couple of the things in the contract that can put buyers in a tough spot. So identifying which inspections you'd like. Tell me about that.
Mm-hmm. So back to the inspection period. When we write your offer, there are these inspections called invasive inspections, and those are categorized on most houses as radon testing and sewer scope testing. On more rural properties, those would be like a septic test or a well test. And if you don't write in your offer that you want those tests done, then you don't necessarily have the right to do so. You would have to go back and renegotiate.
Right.
And you're completely stuck at that point. So that has to be in your initial offer that you're going to be having those conducted.
Knowing the difference between personal property and a fixture.
I have such a horror story with this one.
Lay it on me. What's going on?
One of my first buyer clients, they thought that they were going to get the washer and dryer at closing. That was never in the contract. They just assumed that it would stay with the house, but that is considered personal property. And on the day of closing, when I was so excited to give them their keys, they're walking through the house, they're all excited, and the wife notices that the washer and dryer aren't there. And she threw a tantrum like the worst 5-year-old I've ever met. It was gnarly. I was stunned. I had to just say, I'm sorry, I gotta go.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was an awkward situation.
And a lot of people think that, they might get a copy of the listing, or it might even say it in online, listings that, there's a washer and dryer and this and that, whatever, refrigerator. If it's not written in the contract, it's not a part of the transaction.
Right.
So,
but things that are fixed to the house, which is such a long conversation. We could go on forever about that, but
anything that's screwed into a wall or attached physically is a fixture. If it can be picked up like a picture
or a refrigerator.
Yeah. If it's a freestanding refrigerator or something like that, then it's personal property. So
all of that has to be talked about beforehand. Another thing, some buyers don't quite understand how important earnest money is when they're making their offer. It's always seems to be a conversation when we're writing the offer, that their earnest money is due within 3 business days of their offer being accepted. So you have a little bit of time, but not a lot of time. And, so that takes sometimes going to the bank and getting a cashier's check and coordinating during business hours. And some people oftentimes don't have the ability to do that. So.
Yeah. I remember a situation years ago, very competitive. There were multiple offers. The buyer won the bid, got first position, didn't deposit their earnest money. And the seller said, sorry, you didn't live up to the terms. We're going to go with the backup offer, who had increased their offer amount to make it even more appealing to the seller to move on from them. So because they didn't deposit the earnest money within 3 business days, they were out of contract. Seller moved on to the second position buyer and ended up selling to them. And that's a rough way to go. But all those details are critically important.
Absolutely. So. And I think most of them get ironed out as we're writing the contracts, but if we're not representing you, we aren't able to help you. So, those are some things that we see on the selling side a lot of times too.
Talk to me about cost. We like to talk about this up front with people, but I get the sense that a lot of buyers are blindsided, home buyers are blindsided by some of the costs that are incurred after you get your offer accepted.
So, like everything, costs have gone up. So inspection costs obviously have crept up too, but that can be anywhere between like $600 and $1,000 just to have your inspections done.
The
and
one
that's
that
a
I
lot.
was at yesterday was $1,200.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. It's a big house.
Huge house. That took him like the whole day.
Yeah.
But, when you're thinking about, or when you're putting more money down than you ever have in your life for anything, and then you have this dang inspection cost, sometimes that's just kind of a kick in the gut. So we like to really prepare people for that. And, the inspection period is still a negotiation period. So a lot can happen, and that cost is kind of a risk. You could lose that money and not get the house, which is just something you have to know going into it. And then the appraisal. That is another spendy one that you pay through your lender. That's around $600 to $800. is
I
it
would
more?
say 700 to 1,000, depending on
Super.
the size of the home, the location, if it has property, all those different kind of things. But it's expensive.
Yeah. And that appraisals are associated with your lender closing costs, which we'll get into next. But, so that is kind of thought of when your lender gives you an estimate to close, but still it's needed before the closing happens.
Yeah.
And then we have the lender estimated closing costs.
There are so many different fees and escrow and recording and tax filing and all of that. For most people, it's a good idea to get an estimated closing cost sheet, right, from your lender up front, showing exactly what all your fees are going to be so that you know how much you're going to have to come out of pocket with. The other thing is building in closing cost into the sale, which is actually previously when you started, we didn't do that, did we?
No.
It was too competitive.
Giving your firstborn before that.
Yeah, you weren't going to ask the seller for anything. You're given everything. Now it's a much more balanced marketplace. Buyers should be asking for closing costs. Ask for the seller to pay your broker's representation fees. 99% of them do. And then ask for a closing cost.
Absolutely. That's actually what we talk about next when we talk about negotiation tactics that can save you thousands of dollars. So that's, leading right into that. We have been really recommending that buyers ask for closing costs to be covered, especially if the home that they're offering on has been sitting on the market for any amount of time, longer than 7 days.
One of the best tactics, and I know you do this a lot, when I'm representing a seller and the broker reaches out to me to say, hey, I'm writing an offer on the property. What's important to the seller? Is it just highest and best price? Is it closing fast? Is it, do they need a little bit of time after the sale, after closing, to be in the house? What is it that they're trying to accomplish, and what's most important to them? That's very refreshing because it tells me that the broker understands the business and also knows how important it is to find out what's truly important to the seller, because obviously it's price, right? It's always going to be price. You want highest value, but that's not always the top thing that they're looking for. Sometimes they've got other needs and other requirements, and it's even sometimes emotional things, like they want to know that the buyer is going to treat this property a certain way, or that they know and understand that it's a tight neighborhood and all those type of things.
I agree. Along with that, going back to refrigerators, some sellers will get thrown off about the weirdest things. Well, it seems weird to us, but if they want to take their refrigerator and buyer writes in that they want the refrigerator, they could get so hung up on that they decide to not go with you. So I do think that's the most important thing, is just totally understanding what the sellers want.
Yeah. And if it is highest and best, we talked about writing in closing cost. If it's a $600,000 sale and you want to get $15,000 in closing cost, but you want and feel like you want to offer full price, write in $615 and have them pay it back. So it's still a full price offer. It's over asking. They're going to credit you $15,000 at closing, but they're getting their $600,000, right? The other one that I always look at is if a listing broker says it's highest and best, that's it. Take that for serious, because that tells me that, okay, if we're in a competitive situation and let's say the list price is $600 again, and the buyer's like, okay, we'll just offer them full price. Well, everyone else is getting that information. How about we go $605? It changes your payment by, half a cup of Starbucks every month. Let's go. That extra $5,000 is something that a lot of sellers will look at and go, yeah, sure. Okay, let's go with that offer. It's higher.
There's a lot of other little things baked in. I think that kind of umbrella of what we were talking about is the most important. That's a lot of what we do behind the scenes for you. But if, we aren't working with you specifically, just make sure you ask if your agent can be really communicative for you. There's little fees that, again, sometimes people get hung up on, like HOA transfer fees that you could write in the contract. Maybe there's something different that's worth negotiating with the seller. But I think the biggest cost that is best to negotiate is those closing costs.
Yeah. So one of the last items that I think doesn't get talked about enough is personal preferences for buyers. And husband and wives, or, couples in any shape or form or fashion, are always so funny to listen to. When you walk into a house, and if you've been working with, someone for a while, when you walk into a place and you're like,
oh, instantly.
Oh yeah, this is it. This is going to be a good one. And other times it's so strange because I feel like people just get beat down from the process.
Yeah, they do.
And they walk in, and I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a house and gone, this isn't it. And either the husband or the wife or whoever will say, it's pretty nice.
And you're like, this is the best you're going to get. Sorry. This is the best you're going to see, I promise. Oh. That was a little harsh, but
that is a little harsh.
We're thinking it sometimes.
I had a young couple. He was an engineer for Intel. Super, super nice. Him and his girlfriend. He was buying the house, but she was very, very much involved. And he was constantly trying to, get her input, and she would give it. And, I could tell that he was sacrificing some of the things that he really wanted in the house.
Okay, sure.
And so I had to sit down with him a couple of times. She would be out looking around in the house, and he and I would sometimes sit on the couch or whatever. And, we've seen the house.
Yeah. You're like, that's all I need.
But I would ask him, I'd say, hey, what do you think about this? Is this really?
Yeah.
Well, it's not really the neighborhood I'm looking for, but I think she really likes it. And it's like,
you're like, okay.
Oh, buddy. Yeah. This isn't a sweater you're buying.
Yeah.
It's
a bigger deal.
You're going to be driving to and from all the time. And if you're not happy with that neighborhood or whatever the thing might be, it's going to gnaw at you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So not settling when you have, figure out what your top 2 to 3 to 4 preferences are about a home that you want to live in, want to buy, and then really be firm with that, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's sometimes where you need to kind of negotiate and...
Right. Like if you're getting 4 out of 5 things that you really, really want, how important is that 5th thing to you? Right. But really be honest with yourself on if the things you're going to let go of are going to make you upset every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. My husband and I were so lucky to get into our home in 2021 because it was a very competitive market, but we settled a little bit on the neighborhood. We love our neighbors. They're lovely, but it's an older neighborhood and it doesn't have sidewalks or street lights at night.
Didn't realize you guys don't have streetlights.
No, it's horrible. And we walk all the time. We walk our dogs at least once a day, sometimes twice. And so to not have sidewalks when there's busy traffic at rush hour and it's getting dark and you need a headlamp at 5 is not great. So I'm sad that we kind of settled on that one. So.
Yeah. But you got a whole heck of a lot of other things accomplished with that purchase.
Yes,
I love your house.
Oh, thank you.
You guys have done so great with that.
It's cozy.
Yeah. So
anything else? I can't think of anything else.
No, I mean, when it comes to the biggest home buying mistakes, not making sure it's the right fit, and then not, make sure when you interview a broker that they are going to be on top of the little things and make sure that they really understand what's important to you. Right.
Yeah. If you're not feeling well represented, get out of there.
Yeah, get out of there. A great question to ask a broker when you're interviewing them to represent you in buying a home is, what can you do to help me get my offer accepted?
That is a great question.
Right.
That's smart.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, we hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. We really love doing this. So if you have any requests for content or anything, always looking for that. You can reach us at LivPortland, LivPortland.com. You can find our podcast on there, all the past episodes. And thank you so much to everyone for watching. Second-ranked real estate podcast here in Portland now is what they tell me.
Yay.
Yeah, go figure.
So exciting.
I know.
Hopefully we can live up to that.
Shameless plug there.
I love it. Thank you for listening.
All right, guys. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks for joining us today. If you're interested in finding out more about Joe, myself, or the LivPortland team, you can go to LivPortland.com. Thanks for giving us a listen, and see you next time on the Off the Record podcast.